everybody, and welcome back to the Insert Wisdom podcast. This is episode number 16, I believe, and this is coming out hot on the tails of the last episode that I put out yesterday. Sometimes when it rains, it pours, just got a lot to say. I've been feeling more inspired lately. I posted on my threads, for those of you who listen to my podcast, if you had any topics that you wanted me to talk about or cover, and I got some great responses on there, some funny ones too. But I got one from Tim, who is one of my library keepers. Thank you so much, Tim. Which, side note, if you would like to become a library keeper on my Substack, it's a lot of fun. You guys get little presents and letters, little things that other people don't get. Writing the letters is one of my favorite things. I sit at my typewriter, I type them up. I have this nice parchment paper, green envelopes, wax seal, all of that. And all the letters are coming from the Folklore Library, of course. So when I saw that Tim had this request, I decided I had to sit down and immediately deliver. So thank you so much, Tim, for all of your support and for the idea. So Tim said, I believe you said your next book was to be fantasy. If so, perhaps your thoughts on world building. I love hearing others' views on the topic. Or perhaps a word or two on how you craft a book you are writing by hand, by which I mean, how do you structure it? So this is it's such a juicy question. There's so much that we can dive into here. I'm so excited to talk about this because my creative process makes no sense. And I haven't really run into another writer who writes the way I do. And that's not trying to be like some brag or saying that the way I do it is better, because honestly, I think the way I do it is probably a lot harder than the way other writers probably do it. Every time I've heard authors talk about their writing process, they always say that it's a very structured kind of thing. They have layouts, they write in sequence or in order, and I don't do any of that. So, to start off with, my next book is a fantasy. I guess you could call it a cozy fantasy. I don't know if that would be the proper term. But my thoughts on world building. So if you haven't watched Brandon Sanderson's lectures on YouTube, he does an incredible course about all of this. And he talks about world building in a way that is far more comprehensive than I could talk about it. But this is my process, but once you're done listening to this episode, definitely check those out on YouTube because he's got a lot to say about it, and he's obviously a master world builder. So for me, the way that I'm writing this book is I'm writing it by hand, which I'm sure to a lot of people seems archaic or a bit extra maybe, or time consuming, because obviously after you write something by hand, you have to upload it, or not upload it, you have to type it out, you know what I mean? But that's how I decided to write this one, because it is first person, so it's from our main character's perspective. She's sort of writing it in journal entries. There are some journal entries in the book, so I felt that it would feel much more intimate if I wrote it in first person. And also there's something about writing by hand that just, it connects my inspiration better to my hand as opposed to a laptop, because a laptop, it's so impermanent. And I feel like every sentence I write on my laptop is shit, and then I just have to erase it and start over. Or I get into this really bad habit of editing while I'm writing. And then eventually I over edit and I just think everything I've written sucks. So I just don't write anything. And obviously that's not what you want to do. So with this book, I've been writing it by hand because it forces you, or it forces me at least, to stick to a thought, get it down on paper, and make it good later. That's something a lot of writers have always said, that just get the first draft out, you can make it good later, right? So as far as world building goes, the way that I tend to approach it is that I see my world in images. I see them as flashes across my imagination. I get these random sentences that come into my head, and then I have to write about it, and I expand from those sentences. Or sometimes I will get on Pinterest and scroll photos there, and all of a sudden I'll get an idea for a scene, right? Another thing I really love to do is beautify my environment. So when I'm writing, I will usually have ambiance playing on YouTube. I'll have a candle burning. Maybe I'll have a glass of wine, but I will really make my writing space feel warm and rich, very sensorially appealing, because that tends to feed my imagination more than if I were there was no ambiance, right? It was dead silent. Sometimes I like to go to cafes also, because there's something about being around a lot of other people that helps to also stimulate my imagination. But again, I don't really even know if this is super helpful, but again, the way that I came up with the idea for this novel was just something that was like a flash of insight, and I was like, ooh, what about that? And I think how that happens in my brain is, I've read a lot of media over my lifetime, lots of books, lots of music. I've ingested a lot of content, spoken to a lot of creatives, and it'll be like, it's like a big soup in my brain where it's like all combined. And then I'll get these flashes of, ooh, what about this? What if I combined this with that? So that's kind of how it happened for this third book that I'm writing. It's not necessarily that I sit down and quote unquote brainstorm. I mean, I definitely can. When I do that, what it looks like is this. Again, I'll make my space sensorially rich. I'll play ambiance. And then I'll close my eyes. I'll go inward. And I'll just see what comes up in my brain, in my imagination. It's a very inward process. And then I write down everything that comes out. You should see my notes app, honestly, and the way that I've written this book. I have like a note that's called ideas, right? And it has every fragment. I have written every flash of a sentence, every character idea, and it'll just be in these bullet points, right, in my notes app. I started writing this book on Google Drive also, in their documents section. So I have like multiple beginnings to the book in there. I also bought Scrivener, which I like Scrivener. It's not my favorite thing ever, but I bought it, so I'm going to use it. And in Scrivener, it's quite nice because they let you have different sections. I'm going to open it up right now, actually. But you can have character sections where it will say their name. What are some of their mannerisms, their role in the story? What's their goal? Physical description, personality, occupation, background, internal conflicts, external conflicts, dynamics with other characters. And you can add anything you want in here. And then they have like a places section where you can, put in photos and flesh out the place. I have a notes section where I have a brain dump, which is basically all of my bullet points, which currently is 4,200 words long. There's an outline, but again, I don't really outline at all. There's a scene dump. So it's just random scenes that I've written out of order because that is something that I do, is I write a lot of scenes out of order, because sometimes it really depends on my mood, how I'm feeling. So if I'm feeling really, I don't know, sad for some reason, I'll usually channel that into a scene somehow. And if I have quote unquote writer's block, which I know a lot of people like to talk about writer's block, which I don't really believe in, to be honest with you. I think writer's block is essentially when an author's not being honest. So I'll just write by hand. Usually in my journal, I'll say whatever is honest and true for me in the moment. And then that tends to like unclog the system, and then the scene will start pouring out. Some of my favorite scenes have been written like that. So that's kind of my process for world building, and then I kind of just stitch it all together in the end. It's kind of like a tapestry. But something I have definitely found for world building is that I don't know if it's this way for all writers, but it's definitely this way for me. So the stories that we're drawn to telling are oftentimes reflections of our own psyche or our subconscious, or things that we're trying to process. Doesn't mean that every story that an author writes is like that, but because obviously there are authors who can just write a good story and it's got nothing to do with them. But that definitely seems to be the case for me, and I've loved exploring that in particular. And then what else did Tim say? Tim said, hearing others' views on the topic, or perhaps a word or two on how you craft a book you are writing by hand. How do you structure it? So, yeah, the easiest way to answer that is there is no structure. There is no structure. Everything I just said is the only way I know how to write at least this book. I'm not sure if every book is always going to be different. I have a feeling that it's going to be much more like this book that I'm writing. My debut novel, Under the Same Sky, that I wrote in order. I don't know how I did that. I think I just, my motivation for writing that book, I think just kind of poured out of me, and it manifested as the story that it became. I don't know if I could ever do that again, but yeah, that's essentially what I do with my writing. Okay, took a quick break to check in on my Postmates order, so I still have some time. I really am so excited about this third book that I'm writing. I have no idea when it will be finished, but it takes place in, there's a region of Austria called Styria, but I have decided to treat Styria as if it's the name of a town, and that's where this story takes place, which, at the end of the book, I'll have some provisos that say, hey, by the way, this isn't an actual town, but it is a region in Austria. But I am maybe going to Austria this coming month in December to do some writing. That would be a lot of fun. I think really getting immersed in that atmosphere would be really helpful. One thing also that I think is important to communicate to writers is that it's okay to take breaks. It's okay to not just power through a writing session and pour hours and hours and hours into writing every day, unless that's how you're built, right? Unless that's how you create and that feels correct for you. I have found that it is so helpful to stop and start. Like, even while I'm recording this episode, I will pause it. I'll check some things on my phone. I'll, if I get a message, I'll read that. I'll read over, the prompt that was submitted to talk about this. And it's totally okay to do that, because when you take those breaks and you get some distance from what you're writing, new fresh energy and ideas can pour in, you know? I do have periods of time. In fact, when it was raining here a lot in Los Angeles about a week and a half ago, which was a dream. I loved it so much. I spent an entire day writing, basically, or like 5 hours. That's not an entire day, but it felt like it. I started at like noon, I stopped at 4, and then I wrote some more from like 7 to 10 or something like that. But that's just because I had this wave of knowing exactly what I wanted to write, and it was just pouring out of me, right? And then there are other times when it's just a sentence, and that's totally fine. And oh my God, I wish I could read you this one sentence that I came across in my brain dump section on Scrivener, because when I reread it, I was like, holy shit, I wrote that? That is gorgeous. But like, I don't know if if I'm being too dramatic or protective of my work, but sometimes I feel like if I read you some of the things I've written, or I tell you too much about it, someone will steal it. I don't trust people online. Like, I don't trust that somebody wouldn't read or hear me say something and then they'll be like, ooh, I'll take that and I'll add that to my thing, But like, oh my God, there's this one sentence. It's going to be in my book. I promise. It's going to be in my book, that when I read it, I was like, just give me my accolades now. I'm ready. Just give me all the writing awards. But that's what I mean. Like, even just having a sentence is great, because then what could happen is I'll come back to it. Like I said, taking a break, I'll come back to it, read it, be inspired, and then all of a sudden a new scene will pop in my head, So everything's valuable, whether it's a sentence or 5,000 words in a day, and you kind of just have to honor what your rhythms are, what feels correct for you. I believe that every single writer should have their own system, even if it looks like the general advice that most writers give. I think that is totally fine and worthy. And I'm fully aware that, my way of writing it probably is crazy making to some people, but this is what works best for me. I don't have a linear brain. I don't have the ability to structure, have outlines. Somebody's fire alarm is going off. I don't know if you can hear that. Hopefully you can't, but anyway. Okay, I think it stopped. I tend to think of my process or my brain as like being like a crock pot. Is that a weird way to describe it? It's like you put ingredients in, you let it simmer, and then you serve the meal later. It's like I need time to let things percolate, to come together, to mingle and mix, and then I sort of distill what tastes good, what feels correct, and then I write from that place. So I think that is everything that I have to say about Tim's question. Again, thank you so much, Tim, for submitting that question. I think if I ever have any other thoughts about this process, or if anybody has more questions about it, again, you can email me at insertwisdom@gmail.com. I would be happy to delve into any other thoughts or questions there. Again, you can message me on Threads. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. But maybe I'll do a part 2 if I think of anything else. But I think that's enough on that topic. But I've just been so excited and happy lately because somebody is honking their horn outside. I've been really excited and revitalized to create podcast episodes and content on Substack and Threads. I'm growing really fast on Threads. I'm getting closer and closer to 10,000 followers, which is awesome. I also got a new paying subscriber to my Folklore Library Substack. So thank you so much. Shout out to Anthony. I appreciate you so much. If you would like to support my work, the best place to do that is to check out my books, which I believe I have links to them in the show notes. If not, I have a link tree on all of my socials at It's Kate Hill. You can find my first book, my second book, and my Substack, everything else on that link tree. But the best and easiest way to support me is, well, I guess however you want, really. But if you want to subscribe to the Folklore Library, that I would very much appreciate that. I'm just feeling very excited about the ideas I have for the direction that I want to be going in next with the things I create. When I asked people on Threads what they would like to hear from me on my podcast, somebody commented, shout out to Beaks, they said, "You're really good at explaining your thought process in a way that is somehow engaging," and that they binged 8 episodes the other day. They found me on TikTok, I think. But that, again, really means a lot to me, that you not only listen to so much of the Insert Wisdom podcast, but that you told me that that's how this comes across. I really appreciate that, because I think it's taken me a while to learn about my communication style and process, but I genuinely love just talking about things out loud or on this podcast, or letting you in on social media of on the things that I'm processing in real time, or I'm learning, or little insights that I have. So I am very grateful to each and every one of you. With that being said, amazing. I've recorded an entire podcast episode while I waited for my food, which is still not here. But I'm sure that it will be very soon. So thank you so much again for listening. I will see you in the next episode. Goodbye.